So I'm going to show you how to make the most amazing Simnel cake. Now this is a recipe that we first had in Earle Wellbeing magazine a couple of years ago, and honestly it has become an absolute firm favourite. We're making it so it's Persian spiced, so if you are a real fan of things like rose water, pistachios, almonds, figs, oh my goodness, it is dreamy. And the origins of Simnel cake is it's traditionally used for Easter. So it was really as a kind of a feast cake. So it is quite lavish, it's quite indulgent. It was kind of the marking of the end of Lent and austerity. So I'm going to start here by using some wholemeal spelt flour. So I'm trying to incorporate some of the well-being goodness rather than just use plain flour. Now the recipe that we've got below in the link, this makes quite a large cake. I'm actually halving it, because I've got fewer mouths to feed at the moment. So I'm just making a slightly smaller one. But traditionally you make 2 cakes and you stack them on top of each other with a thick layer of marzipan in the middle. But I'm just going to do the one, and then I'll show you how I decorate it with a traditional Simnel cake decorating. So to start with, I've got the recipe up here from the website on my iPad. I've got 100 grams of wholemeal spelt flour, and then I'm going to put into that 100 grams of ground almonds. So already you can see it's going to be quite a rich, quite fruity, quite heavy cake. But to lighten it, I'm going to use some baking powder. That will help it just to give a little bit of a rise. So I'm going to use a generous teaspoon of baking powder. So I'm going to put all the dry ingredients into my bowl first. And then I'm also going to add a generous amount of ground ginger. I'm actually going to use a tablespoon of ground ginger. So that's going in like that. So it's quite spiced, but not too much, because the other thing that goes in are some crushed cardamom pods. Again, cardamom, that really wonderful flavour from the East, from the Middle East. It's used in so many dishes, and it has that really kind of pungenty, aromatic smell. Now you could just crush these pods in a pestle and mortar. If you've got one, you want them to be kind of quite finely crushed. I don't have my pestle and mortar here, so I'm going to just chop mine and pop them in, and then give that a bit of a mix. So those are my dry ingredients. Then in my food processor, in my mixer, I'm going to mix together the butter and the sugar. And I have got here, just checking the quantities, I've got 150 grams of each of unsalted butter and also of muscovado sugar, which is the really dark brown unprocessed sugar. So my butter's going in, and then I've got here that nice muscovado sugar. It's got a higher mineral content than most other sugars, so it's nice to use. It also gives cakes and kind of spiced recipes that really dark richness. So I'm going to put my food processor on here and give this a mix. Or you could just beat it by hand with a wooden spoon. Turn it up a bit more, mix that all in. Then into that, I'm going to add some stem ginger. Again, a real favourite. I've used 2 of the little balls of stem ginger that you get in jars, plus a little bit of the syrup. So that is going in there. I'll add that into my mixture now. So I've got 2 of the little balls of ginger that have been chopped up, and I'm also going to use some of the syrup. So the syrup, again, this just helps with the moistness, so I'm going to add in about a tablespoon of the syrup, and it's also giving it some extra sweetness as well. Okay, so once that has mixed together, I'll just show you the mixture here. I'm then going to add some of the other ingredients. So that's kind of beaten it nicely, taken all the lumps out of the sugar. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the eggs, and I'm going to use 4 eggs. And what is quite a good idea to do, you can either beat them before you add them, or frankly, I just add them to be quicker. I add them straight into the mixture. These are eggs from my chicken, so I know that they are fresh and good, but it's always worth, rather than tipping the eggs straight into the mixture, just to crack them separately, just in case you get a bad one. You don't want to suddenly find that you've cracked a bad egg into your mixture and have to start all over again. So one at a time, the eggs go into the mixture and get beaten in. 1, 2, 3, like that, and then the fourth one. Oops, going straight in. Force of habit. There you go, but I know they're absolutely fine. Right, so they are mixed in together. And then into that, just check that that's all good. Give the bowls, the sides of the bowl, just a bit of a scrape down. And then I can put the dry ingredients. Now I've got the wet ingredients in there mixed together. I can add my dry flours, the flour with the ground almonds, and the baking powder and the spice. So I'll do that spoon at a time just to slowly get it absorbing into the mixture. Scrape the last little bit off my spatula, don't want to waste any. Too good to waste. So I'll just add spoon at a time. So that just incorporates into the cake recipe. It's always very satisfying, isn't it, when you're mixing and you can see the cake mixture coming together. I will also add a teaspoon of salt into that, so I mustn't forget that. So there we go, there's my flours in there, and I will add a little grind of salt. And see how that, yeah, that's all mixing up really well. So now I can add the dried fruit and also another key ingredient in this cake, which gives us this kind of Persian influence, and that's some rose water. And I bought this online, it's all natural. Always check when you're getting rose water because sometimes it can just be synthetic flavouring. But this is a really good quality one, which you don't need much of it actually. This recipe is calling for 1.5 tablespoons. So I can just measure that by eye. Like that. Oh, the smell is wonderful. Oh, really good. And again, it's that Middle Eastern, isn't it? The rose water, the pistachios, the almonds, the figs, just all so delicious when it comes together. So the figs, I have chopped these already. So these are just natural dried figs. And I have got here 150 grams of figs, which will go into the mixture. And then I'm also using currants and I'm using raisins. Same, 150 grams of currants, 150 grams of raisins. The recipe is below, so you can tap that to see if you want a reminder. So the dried fruit goes in. And then it really is just a question of mixing that all together until the dried fruits are all incorporated with that lovely rose water, the spices. It really is good. So that has now mixed. And I'm going to use a 23 centimetre cake tin. And I'm using a spring-loaded tin just because I find they're a bit more reliable when it comes to getting the cake mixture out. So there we've got my lovely mixture there. And that is what's going into my cake tin. So I have greased my cake tin. Here it is, the spring-loaded one with the clip sides. So I've greased this with butter around the edges and just lined it with some greaseproof paper or parchment paper. So all of that mixture is going to go in. And then I bake this in a relatively lowish oven. It's about 150 degrees for about an hour. I've got a fan oven, so that goes quite quickly. But you know, check it after an hour, pop a clean knife in or a skewer just to see if it comes out cleanly, to see if the cake mixture is cooked all the way through. So I'll spread that into the cake tin. It will rise a little bit, but not a huge amount because it is quite a rich cake, but it has got a little bit of that baking powder in there. So I'm going to press that down. And then just to keep the top from burning, I'm going to add a little bit of greaseproof paper just to the top. So if you take your greaseproof paper, slice the approximate width off, and then to make the circle, I'm just going to fold this over and over again. So fold it in half and half again and half again till you've got a sort of triangle shape, and then you can measure pretty much from the center of the cake out. That's about there. Trim off the end and you've got an approximate circle. But what I'm going to do before I put that on my cake mixture is I'm just going to create a little steam hole just in the center. Just snip the little nose off, and then I've got a little hole like that, just to let the steam out while it cooks. So place that over there, and then that's going to go into my preheated oven for, as I say, an hour, maybe just a tad over. And then in time-honoured tradition, here is one I made earlier. So now if you do the full quantity in the recipe below, that will make twice this. So you want 2 cake tins, unless you do them one at a time. And then you would sandwich them together, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to use this one because I think, frankly, this is going to be plenty for all of us. So to put the marzipan on, you need some apricot jam. I've just heated this a little bit just to melt it. This goes over the top of the cake. This is what's going to stick the marzipan onto the top of the cake. And you can also put it down the sides if you want to, but I just kind of like a thick layer actually over the top. And to be honest, I don't have any apricot jam at the moment, so I've used plum jam. It's a homemade plum jam from last summer, and I figured, well, you know, they're stone fruits, they're from a similar tree. I think it will be fine. So, and again, it's just giving a nice little bit of moistness and some sweetness to the cake when you bite into it. So that is prepped. So now I need the marzipan, and this is where I've made this a little bit different this year. So I've actually made a pistachio marzipan. So this is something that I made a few moments ago. I've used pistachio nuts, the unsalted kind. You can buy them online or in health food shops. And I've mixed them with ground almonds. And you can do it with all pistachio nuts, but that works out quite pricey. So I know this is meant to be an indulgent cake, but even so. But actually what I really like is it gives that lovely Middle Eastern flavour, and it also gives a really interesting colour, greeny colour. And what I need is my rolling pin to roll that. But before I roll it out, I'm actually going to take some marzipan to one side, and that's for the traditional decorations. So I'm going to take quite a generous chunk, maybe a third of the marzipan, and I'm going to leave that to one side, and I'll show you what I'm going to do with that in just a moment. So meantime, just make this into a round kind of ball shape and flatten it, and then let's give this a nice even roll. As I say, you can do the sides, but I think it's nice just to have the topping, and it keeps quite a nice thick layer. I was looking up actually the origins of Simnel cake, and it's actually a medieval cake. It dates back quite a long way, and in the old days they used to steam it. You know, they used to make like a boiled pudding and steam it, but obviously we've, you know, these days I think most people will bake a rich fruit cake. I'll try and keep that slightly round in shape so I can just lift that and pop it on. That looks as though it's roughly the same size. Don't have to be too precise because after all this is homemade, it's not shop bought. See if I can lift that up. Look at that, really amazing. And I think I'll use that side because that's I was rolling it out on the icing sugar. So I'll just put this to one side, and then you can see it go onto the cake. See if my eye has judged it correctly. Look at that, there we go. Perfectly sat onto the cake. Now, you may be wondering what I am going to do with the leftover pistachio marzipan. Well, I'm going to make 11 marzipan balls, and these traditionally represent the 11 apostles of Jesus for Easter. Why 11 and not 12? Well, you don't include Judas. I'm afraid he gets left off the cake for obvious reasons. So I'm going to divide this into 11 pieces. So that's what, 4, what would that be, 8? So let's see, that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Add a little bit more over there, I think. Roughly the same size. You can just dust your hands with icing sugar just to roll them together. And then it's quite therapeutic to do this. And if you are a lover of marzipan, then this is a heavenly cake, because not only do you get that thick layer of marzipan on the top, and maybe even in the middle as well, if you've done the double-decker version, which you can see on our website. So we actually made the big version for that one for the photo shoot. But you also, if you're lucky and you're careful with your slicing of the cake, you get a whole marzipan ball as well. And then to carry on with the Persian theme, I'm going to decorate it with pink rose petals, because it just looks so pretty. And just be careful, you can buy edible rose petals if you want to eat them. I wouldn't eat rose petals from a florist shop. You just don't know kind of what their journey's been and what they've been sprayed with, but they look pretty for a decoration. Or you could decorate them with edible flowers, lots of edible flowers. You can find all sorts of information on that on the Earle Wellbeing website. If you want to cover it with edible flowers, that would look really pretty. Or you could use dried rose petals, maybe from your garden, or if you're lucky enough to have some early roses growing, depending when you're watching this, then you could use your own rose petals just scattered over the top. So here we go, then I've got my 11 apostles. And then I'm going to place those onto my cake. And again, traditionally, you place them all around the edge. See if I can work out. You can make them stick if you want with just a little bit of leftover jam. Just going to place these on roughly to start with. It's always a good idea just to get your spacing right, I think, before sticking them down. There we go, room for one more. There you go, there's your 11 apostles on the cake. And then I am going to, again, I thought just to keep on with the Persian theme, I've got a few leftover pistachio nuts here that I was using to grind to make my marzipan. So I thought I might just roughly chop a small handful of these. I have to say, the cake is absolutely delicious. You know, you might want to keep this recipe and use it at other times of the year. The flavours, the Middle Eastern flavours, the aromas, the spices, the rose water, the pistachios, it's really special. You know, when people eat it, maybe they're just expecting a normal piece of fruit cake and they eat it and they go, wow, what is this? This is really sensational. So it is a luxury cake. It's a bit of an extravagant cake. But I'm going to sprinkle those on the top like that. And then just to prettify it, I have some of my rose petals. So I've got these, you can just find these in good supermarkets or delicatessens. They're actually culinary grade dried rose petals. Just a sprinkle on the top. And there you have your Persian inspired Simnel cake ready for Easter. Absolutely delicious. I hope you enjoy. Leave me a comment below if you do, and don't forget you can tap the subscribe button if you want to subscribe to the Earle Wellbeing YouTube channel, so then the next recipe or idea or vlog will automatically just pop to the top of your feed. And there's even a little bell. If you want to tap the bell, that means that your device will go ping whenever there is a brand new video. So I hope you enjoy and have a very happy Easter.